The review embargo is up. Welcome to my non-spoiler review of The Matrix Resurrections. I went to go see this movie last week with a critic screening, but I couldn't release this video until today. This is going to be a non-spoiler review for the film. I do have spoilers on the channel for the film, which turned out to be, well, correct, because I knew they were. There was a couple things that were not in the spoilers, though, that surprised me about the movie. I didn't get everything 100%, but there were some things, because there were some things in the movie that I didn't hear about from my source, and I was surprised. Not really in a bad way, but a couple of small little plot elements here. But for the purposes of this video, there will not be any spoilers. The movie comes out tomorrow on HBO Max and on theaters, and it's definitely a film that should probably be seen in theaters because it's a big, heavy special effects movie. So, without going into spoilers, let's get into what goes on in this film. So this movie takes place a certain time, and again, I'm not going to go into spoilers, including the ones that I covered. It's a certain time after the Matrix Revolutions, and a big part of this movie is having to explain to not only the audience, but some of the characters in the film what has happened since Revolutions. The thing about this film is, it pretty much is The Force Awakens. If you did not like the fact that The Force Awakens was basically taking the same plot threads from A New Hope and just kind of recycling them, you probably won't like this movie. This movie pretty much redoes the first Matrix film as far as the journey of Neo goes. Obviously, there's different twists and turns and they go in different directions, but still, like, the main hero's journey of self-discovery is the core of this film. That's pretty much what it is. But the movie does throw curveballs at you, including some surprising characters, some surprising new versions of old characters, and also some interesting, for example, in the movie, Neo at one point questions whether what happened in the past was for nothing. You know, did the previous trilogy matter? And in fact, it did matter because he changed things. The whole entire world, the entire world building, the lore of the Matrix is something that I'm really, really happy about. I love the Matrix world. That's why I was excited for this film, because even if it sucks, right, and there are parts of this movie that do suck, I'm going to get into that here in a minute, I love being a part of this world, like, you know, like Little Mermaid, part of your world. I like going to see and being in the world of the Matrix. And this movie brought me back in many ways. There is tons of footage from the first three films in this movie. They show clips of everything from the first three movies, all three movies, not everything, but, to tell the story, the narrative of catching you up on what's been going on. But I still think if you haven't seen the other movies, it's not a good idea to watch this one because you're not going to really know the core story. But what I was going to say was, if that was a problem for you with Force Awakens, you probably won't like this movie. Now, again, there are differences. There's a new villain. There's the world building has changed. The whole world, both in the Matrix and in the real world, are vastly different than they used to be because of the consequences of what happened in the Matrix Revolutions. With that being said, though, the problems I had with this film, first of all, let me just say, Keanu Reeves, Carrie Anne Moss, and Neil Patrick Harris are phenomenal in this movie. They are very, very good as far as what they do. And the story really is, in many ways, it does have a lot of heart. The story, it is a love story, very much like how the love story between Neo and Trinity sort of evolved in the original trilogy. That's like the core story here, because the motivations of the characters are for them to reunite, but there's obviously going to be roadblocks in the way and problems they have to deal with, one of them being the fact that there's a lot of mystery behind what exactly happened to Neo and Trinity at the end of Revolutions, because we all thought they were dead, but they do explain to you in the movie what happened and why it happened. And to be honest with you, the more I thought about it, the more it did kind of make sense. When I first saw this movie, what they did with the Matrix lore, I was kind of unsure about. Now I will tell you that I do feel better about it. I actually like some of the ideas they had here. I really like what the Wachowskis, well, not the Wachowskis, and this movie was only done by Lana Wachowski. The other ones was, both of them together. But when it comes to this film, I did like sort of the direction they went in with the world, and the movie is very meta. If you've ever seen stuff like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, like, it's so meta that inside the Matrix, they reference the Matrix as being a video game, but one that is known by the people in the Matrix. So what I mean by that is, Thomas Anderson's a computer programmer in this movie, Neo is, and he works for Warner Brothers. I'm not making this up. And he's got by his computer desk, he's got little statues of like Trinity and like the Sentinels, almost as if he's actually working for Warner Brothers creating the Matrix. And this is all, well, I'm not going to spoil what actually is going on, but it's all really, really meta. Like the whole thing, like the whole movie, the first like 30, 45 minutes of the film kind of make fun of, they make fun of what reboots are. Like they make fun of like how everything's nostalgia based and everything's corporate. Like there's a whole sequence in this movie where they are making a whole scene where they're making fun of how all these reboots like Star Wars and even this movie, it's all corporate. They have to come up with, this has to be right for the fans. We have to do this, we have to do that. And the political stuff, they kind of make fun of that. And really the first kind of 30, 45 minutes, they try to recapture the mystery from the first Matrix, that feeling of like mystery that Thomas Anderson felt. He's not sure what's going on, he doesn't know where to go. And I think they somewhat succeeded, but not quite to the level of the first Matrix. You're not going to be able to top on that first Matrix movie. I went to go see this movie with a buddy of mine, and he said this is his favorite sequel, though. He liked this one more than Reloaded and Revolutions. I don't know how I feel about that, because one thing that the movie was missing, in my opinion, was it didn't have enough martial arts for me. There was not enough martial arts action, which to me was a big cool point of the originals. There just wasn't enough of that in this film. There was some, don't get me wrong. I mean, you've seen it in the trailers, but to me, it was lacking like a big martial arts sequence. Also, the finale of the movie, the last like 15 minutes, I was not a fan of, dude. I hated it. The final sequence with like in the streets, and I'm not going to go into spoilers, but there's a big final action sequence, right, in the movie where like there's a bunch of shit going on, like people got guns. It was a big disappointment for me. Now, I'm going to watch it again on HBO Max tomorrow, because I already saw it once in the theater, and I'm going to probably come back with a spoiler review, and I'll give more deeper thoughts on the actual story a bit more, because I've only seen it once, and I did get confused when I first saw it on a couple parts. There was a couple things that were very confusing to me. Like, for example, near the end of the film, certain characters have certain powers, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, characters have abilities and powers that was not even hinted. And I feel like if I watch the movie again, maybe there will be some foreshadowing, but it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm like watching it, and I'm like, how can this person do this if they've never been able to do it before? It doesn't make any sense. Like, that type of shit happens in the third act a lot. Like, it really does happen a lot, and they kind of bend sort of the, and maybe they did it on purpose, but they kind of bend your perspective on that. Like, that really pissed me off. Like, honestly, the issue with this film is that Spider-Man right now is kicking everybody's ass in the box office. I don't think this movie is going to do anywhere close to the numbers of Spider-Man or even some of the Matrix other movies, because I don't see this movie having a lot of replayability, like rewatchability. I'm a huge fan of The Matrix. I love that world, and I want to see this movie one more time. But when I walked out of the theater, the last 15 minutes or so were so, like, just, uninspired. I felt they were very just, it could have been done way better. It was just kind of lackluster to me. But I didn't want to watch the movie again. And I feel like the general audience who's not really into this franchise as a hardcore, I think they will probably feel the same way. I don't see this movie getting repeat views. I really don't. Or if it does get repeat views, it won't be at the theater. It'll be on HBO Max. But either way, there's enough stuff here that's probably worth seeing at least once this movie. But be prepared, because the last 15 minutes or so are very, I don't know, I just didn't like them. Also, I want to say that as far as political commentary goes, is the movie woke or whatever? There's probably some of that in there because Lana Wachowski is trans. I mean, it's no secret. So you're going to have a little bit of that in there. It did not overshadow the plot of the movie, though. I think the main political message that was sent by the end of the movie, which we actually get it at the very end, is that at the end of the day, people, us, we're under the control of the corporations. It's literally like they are telling us we control you. The corporations control us. That's the message I got by the end of the movie. Like, and when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it, but for me, this movie, I want to see it one more time before I give a final review. I did like most of it. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I really enjoyed most of this film. It looks great. It sounds great. Like, got that same Matrix feeling, the sound effects. You know, it's got some cool character banters. There's a couple of cool fights here and there. Not as much as I wanted, but to me, it ultimately is going to probably be seen as a bit of a letdown. You know what I mean? They're never going to reach the highs of the first movie. This one probably is maybe on the level of Revolutions. You know, I wouldn't put it on the level of Reloaded, but for me, the sequence in Reloaded with the motorcycle chase, that was phenomenal. It was better than the one in this movie. And the fights in the other movies are better. So this is much... What makes this movie interesting is the plot and what they did with the world after Revolutions. That's the most interesting thing. If you don't care about that, you're not going to like the movie. So that's my review for The Matrix Resurrections. I would say thumbs in the middle, slightly going up, because I did enjoy the movie. I did like it, don't get me wrong. But yeah, there's just some things that really pull it down. Like the bads really yank it down for me. And I'm curious to revisit this one maybe after I see it again, maybe in 6 months, see how I feel about it. Because it's one of those movies that I think over time, because my opinions about The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions have changed, right? I used to hate them. I used to love them. I used to feel indifferent about them. Now I kind of just like them. Nothing will top the first movie though. You just can't. It's perfection. That first movie is fucking perfect. Anyways, that's it. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Actually, I'll talk to y'all tonight for the Hawkeye thing. And then I'll have my Matrix Resurrection spoiler review up probably tomorrow. Talk to you soon.